everyone, welcome back to Adobe Illustrator for Cartographers. I'm Dr. Heath Robinson, and in this lesson we're continuing learning about how to draw arrows. And we just looked at freehanding our arrows with the pencil tool and then putting an arrowhead on them using the arrowhead ends in the stroke palette. I want to show you a different way to create these smooth curves for your maps. It's very important because it's very difficult to get a very smooth, very controlled curve, and I want to show you how to get that using the pen tool and Bezier curves. The pen tool is actually very powerful, and the Bezier curve tools will let you get that very precise kind of curve that you want, but for some reason the tool intimidates some people, and I think it's just because they don't know how to use it. So I want to make sure that you understand exactly how to use the pen tool and how to get the most power out of it for these sorts of applications. So let's use the pen tool to create a curve between, I just put up these two symbols here to work with. Infantry there, that's NATO standard for friendly infantry, and then I have the tower symbol that we created in an earlier lesson. And let's say I want to have the infantry going to the tower and I want to indicate this by an arrow. Alright, let's refresh ourselves on the pen tool. I'm going to go over here to the pen tool, and if you recall, whenever I am using the pen tool, you can see the little icon that's right there at the corner of the pen tool. That means that I'm about to start a completely new path. So when I click there, I will enter a new node. There, I've got a new node right there. And then when I click again, you'll notice that there's no little icon there on the side of my pen tool. And that just means that when I click again, it will connect the 2 points that I clicked by a line. And so if you're trying to come through here and be very precise, like you're digitizing something or digitizing a line or a polygon, you can be very precise with that by drawing these line segments with the pen tool. I can draw a line just like this. If I want to close this form off, then all I have to do is go back up to the original node that I drew. And you see the little circle now that's right next to my pen tool when I'm on that node? That just means that I'm back to it and I'm about to close off that form. And if I click there, now I've made the first node connect with the last node, and I have a closed form if I want to fill it in. That's what we were doing earlier with the pen tool. I'm going to undo that. If that right there were the only things that the pen tool had going for it, everybody would have no problem with using the pen tool. But what you can do with the pen tool if you hold down, and you may have already noticed, is you get these wild-looking handles, and those are for drawing curves. They're called Bezier curves. They were developed, I think, about 30 years ago for the mathematical descriptions of lines, and they're a standard way of communicating and developing lines inside vector art in many different programs because it is so useful and so standard for creating lines that are creating curves that are scalable and don't lose integrity as you zoom in or zoom out, which, as we've been talking about, is a characteristic of vector art in general, including vector cartography. So I'm going to just delete that and start over. And let me just show you what I'm talking about. I've got the pen tool right here, and if I hold down, you can notice my little emblem right there that says I'm starting a new path. I'm going to hold down and drag. I didn't just click, I held down and I drug. So what I get are these two handles here. Okay, I get these curve handles. So you see the little point right there in the center that I initially drew, but then I get these curve handles. I'm going to release. I did not draw a line there. It looks like I drew a line, but actually I didn't. The only thing that I drew was that point, that anchor point right there. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click over here. Now you see that there's a line, a curve connecting those two, and I'm going to drag out again to get those handles. You'll notice that it's changing the shape of that curve as I drag out and get longer handles. Very close handles right here, very long handles right here. I'm going to release, and now I have made a curve. I've made a curve between those that's being communicated by these two different handles. If I click with the hard select tool, I can move that form. But if I use the soft select tool, you know that allows me to select individual nodes. And so if I select this particular node, I can get back to the handles, and I can begin shifting these handles so that they change the arc of the curve to be just how I want it. I can change this one too. The secret with the pen tool and creating these curves is to go slow and use a lot of control in this. People don't understand the pen tool when they're holding down and dragging in this, and then you're like, what in the world is this? What am I doing? I don't know how to draw a curve with that. Well, you can't use that tool like that and get a smooth, nice curve. You want to go slow, go section by section, and then use your handles to produce the kind of curve that you want. Notice the closer I go, the tighter it goes. I can go way out and sort of exaggerate the curve. And then as I move it, it moves the curve. This is something that you're really going to have to play with. And as long as you remain smooth and in control, you're going to be able to produce the kind of very smooth, very controlled line that you want on flow maps without trying to freehand it. The freehanding just isn't going to look as good as a nice controlled arc done by the Bezier curves. Let me delete these. And let me show you a couple of other examples. Let me do 3 nodes. I'm going to hold here, drag out, click here, drag out, click here, drag out, and there, and drag out. So now I've got this form right here. There are 2 different kinds of nodes that make up a Bezier curve like this. There are interior nodes, and then there are also edge nodes. Let me show you converting one of these to an edge node. Now notice, this is a standard node. You see how it has that handlebar on both sides? It's got 2 different sides that I can adjust and make it however I want it to if I'm trying to make the curve between 2 different locations. This one does too. See how there are 2 handles that I could adjust if I want to adjust that curve? There are 2 of them. Now here, there are also 2 of them. That's on an end, but it's also a standard node. I can make a curve. See that nice form I've got there? I can make one of those nodes different. I can turn one of them into what's called a corner node. And I do that by dragging out on the pen tool. I'm going to use the Convert Anchor Point tool. Let me convert that one into a corner. Notice how it just changed? Now it's a corner inside this curve. Look at that, how I get a very straight line here and then it abruptly changes. I don't get the smooth transition that I get on one of the standard nodes. I get a very abrupt transition between 2 different curves. If I drag this down, it even exaggerates even more the kind of curve that I've got. I can adjust this node right here and use its handle to pull this over here, and you can see that the very sharp corner that I get. I wouldn't get that if it were not converted into a corner node already. You have to make sure that that is a corner node before you do this. Let me just show you another thing with that convert node to corner. If I draw an ellipse, lots of people use this example, and I want to have an eye shape. How do I do that? Well, I can convert these 2 different nodes here into corners rather than those standard kinds of nodes, and I get a very classic eye shape. So you can tell right there, that's the difference between having the standard nodes here, and then having corner nodes over here, and I get that very sharp corner for that classic eye shape, which I didn't get when I drew a standard ellipse because I had the standard ends, the standard nodes on all 4 nodes that were making up that ellipse. Also, I guess you probably noticed by now that we do have Add Anchor Point tool and Delete Anchor Point tool, so that if you've got a whole bunch of anchor points that you end up not needing inside your particular curve, you can delete them out. Or if you need to add an anchor point to be able to draw it out or manipulate it or manipulate the shape, you can say Add Anchor Point tool, and that will do that for you. So those are the 4 tools underneath the pen tool. Let me delete that, and let's try to put in a curve between the infantry unit and the castle. So I'm going to do exactly that using the pen tool. Maybe I'll just start down here and then go here, drag out, and there, and drag out. Tell you what, I might need another one on this side. So what if I click here to continue this line. Do you see that slash that I get right there? When I get that slash right there, that means I'm going to continue that line and then go over here and drag out again. I'll move my icons or my symbols for the sake of example. Bring to front. And now I can use the soft selection tool to come in here and manipulate exactly how I want the curve to be between these two. And that's a lot easier, and it's also a lot more adjustable than if I were trying to do all of this by hand. If I were trying to freehand it and I didn't like it, well, then I'm kind of out of luck. But this way I've got it saved. I can manipulate all of the different points and exactly their arc using the Bezier system. Again, go slow with it, and then if I want to, I can use some arrowheads. Oh, other side. Some arrowheads on that and create my arc. Maybe I want that to be behind that. So anyway, that's a brief tutorial on using the pen tool and understanding the Bezier curves and exactly what they can do for you in order to produce a very smooth effect with your lines, and especially arrow lines here when you're trying to show some kind of movement on your map. The last thing we'll do is look at producing arrows for flow mapping using the pattern brush tool. So I'll see you in that lesson shortly.